All right, cool. So we're going to cover kidneys. Since we didn't have, there's a lot of info on kidneys, but we wanted to kind of simplify it for y'all. Allie added a video that's 3 minutes that we'll play. So we'll watch that. And then we'll kind of, if y'all want to ask questions throughout the way, feel free. We'll also kind of at the end bring this full spectrum.
And then also, I was going to add something too. Like, one of our goals with some of these presentations is like, in the beginning, like, it might just sound basic, but a lot of you'll be surprised, even like me sometimes, where I'm like, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Like just bringing it back to like, what do the kidneys even do? Like, we know a lot about, and we teach a lot about like root cause stuff and blood work to look at kidneys. And you hear us saying like, oh, the kidneys are affected because of mold, but like, we're kind of including some other basic stuff in here. So I hope you guys kind of like I guess I don't know, either A, appreciate it, or like that's the goal of like just bringing it back to basics. Like, where are they? Like, my husband's like, where are your kidneys? And I was like, great question. So glad you asked. Like, it's
uh,
not all common knowledge, and so we're kind of like, catering to a large demographic here.
we are. And then I kind of didn't tell Allie this, but y'all know I always like to bring in the, well, what about the now? And so I pulled, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six. I've pulled 6 articles that are pretty basic, but I kind of want to go over some of them with y'all
Cool.
on what COVID has done to the kidneys.
Love it.
And there's now studies coming out about like how long haulers has impacted them, percentages of those that were hospitalized that are now seeing changes in their renal markers. It's just very, very, very interesting. And I was wondering why. And we're going to do a whole call with y'all on cells. But when we explain gluten in the body, and it looks like a butterfly of the thyroid. And so when there's an immune challenge, they go and attack the gluten. And in doing so, the thyroid can often be attacked as well. Well, with COVID, with viruses, receptors of cells are almost like housing sites. And so the kidneys are not only a target organ for heavy metal toxicity, but they have cells and receptor sites that are targets for viruses. So imagine like a bus. The bus is one of your cells of your kidneys, and all the viruses go and invade the bus, and it triggers a cytokine storm. So a cytokine storm is basically like histamine intolerance. Cytokines are through the roof. You have to calm it down. Calming down a cytokine is what stops viral replication. It kicks the viruses off the bus. And so when that cytokine storm happens and it's attacking the viruses, what do you think it's also attacking? The kidney cells. And so that's why they were seeing like a huge dip in overall kidney function and kidney damage to the tissues. And that's why you see CRP go up, because the other target organ is the lungs. And that's why a lot of COVID was upper respiratory. The other area was the heart. We're seeing a lot of what y'all are seeing right now in the world with the heart. So though this information is basic, it's life-changing, because just the act of supporting your kidneys can do far more than we realize. So I think that the term, even in y'all's protocol, is basic. It's like, well, that's not important. It's so simple. It can be like life-changing in a lot of ways. So your kidneys are 2 bean-shaped organs, and they look like kidney beans. One of the foods that supports your kidneys and purifies of toxins is kidney beans, believe it or not. And they're shaped like kidneys. Same thing of like how walnuts support their brain, and they're shaped like a brain. And they're located right below your adrenal glands. So if you can see that picture on the right, you have your adrenal glands, and then you have your kidneys, and then you have your entire urinary tract. We'll go into further detail probably in the coming weeks with like the urethra, the bladder, other parts of the urinary tract as well. But your kidneys are part of your immune system, and they filter about 200 quarts of fluid every day, which is enough to fill a large bathtub. That's probably one of the things that Allie put on here that's like, wow, I didn't know that, like fun little fact. Like, that's a lot of fluid, y'all.
Yeah.
A lot of fluid. And so imagine that when we think of like the body swelling, if we cannot filter properly, that's a lot of fluid. Your body is mostly water. So when you start to remove toxins or bust biofilms, if the kidneys are not supported and can't remove waste efficiently, one of the ways is through the urine and peeing, your body's gonna swell. It's like a bathtub where the drain has a bunch of hair in it. What's going to happen to that water? It's not going to drain as efficiently.
And I said, so when we were talking about weight gain, like I was explaining, like, what does your body do to heal, to get rid of? It swells, it inflames, it needs more fluid like a river to get rid of stuff versus like sludgy mud that's not gonna. So it was kind of like a perfect segue into kidneys. So we can kind of tie that in, I think, too, to like, I mean, and you're just hearing it being tied in already is like,
yeah,
you're literally like, your body needs fluid to remove. And if that's not happening, where is it going to go? It's going to get backed up. So not to say that just because you're gaining weight, your kidneys need support, but during detox and during elimination, the kidneys are one of the things that are so heavily strained that like almost everybody could probably do basic things to support your kidneys, and it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, and it will tie in because one of the key markers we have y'all look at in blood work is something called uric acid. Uric acid is a very good marker for kidneys, but it's also a very good marker for blood sugar balance, edema. And so one of the things that can happen when these organs get impaired is it fluctuates those kidney filtration markers and things like uric acid, which throws off insulin. If we have insulin resistance, you cannot burn fat when insulin is high. It won't work. It's the same thing that you can't tap into fat stores when glucose is high, when cortisol is high. And that's why lowering stress can be so pivotal. I even put a slide on here, or not here, but a little quote that I'll read to y'all here in a bit about when in doubt, balance your blood sugar, balance your stress levels, and drink enough water. Like those three things alone can do wonders when you, last point here on this slide, balance your body's electrolytes. Those are essential minerals that help with the fluid balance. If you're drinking a ton of isolated water without minerals and you're peeing it all out, you're not hydrated at all. You need minerals for proper hydration and for filtration.
Think about too, like if you've ever just eaten like a ton, or like an old saying, but like you've ever eaten like just a ton of junk food and it's like, oh, I feel like puffy, or like from alcohol and like the sodium imbalances, it's like your body, like with too much sodium, like gets puffy. Like if you eat like an entire thing of salt, your ring's probably not going to come off. It's because your body is like literally has that electrolyte imbalance that inflames and puffs.
Yeah. And you pee through your potassium when you're stressed. So if you don't have enough potassium to offset your sodium, you're going to swell as well. And like detoxing is a stressor to the system. So like adding in adrenal cocktails, one of the reasons they're so helpful is they're rich in potassium with coconut water and vitamin C to support the adrenals. But it's helping nourish your body so you're not wasting potassium out. All right, so blood flows into your kidneys through something called the renal artery. Tiny blood vessels in your kidney are what filter the blood, and then that filtered blood is what returns to your bloodstream through the renal vein. So these are the air filter, or like the air filter of your home. Think of the air filter in your home. Ideally, you're changing it every 3 months. I always have like an alarm on my phone every 3 months where I go up into my attic. I take out my MERV 13 filter. I learned about the best ones from Andrew Melrose, who runs the account Mold Authority Live. I put in the new one and I throw the other one away. And at 3 months, it's got all the junk on it. It's like the black tar, like those filters, they're taking everything in from outside. And that's what's coming into your home if it's not being filtered properly. Same thing with the kidneys. It is filtering the blood and removing unwanted waste and toxins so that that's not dumped into the bloodstream, AKA the air into your house. They can even cleanse themselves when, key point here, the body takes in enough fluid. So when you're detoxing, your body's naturally going to require more minerals and water, which is why so many times with y'all, we're like, more minerals, more water, more minerals, more water, more minerals, more water. Because if the kidneys get backed up, everything else is going to get backed up. So then blood flows into the kidneys where it's filtered and cleansed of the excess fluids and waste back to the bloodstream. Toxins are passed through urine. That can get impacted if they're not filtering efficiently. 20 to 25% of cardiac output, so when you're thinking about the heart, goes through the kidneys, allowing them to filter the blood 60 times per day. They also will control the pH balance. So if you're looking at your blood work at the urinary pH and you're outside of the window of 6.5 to 7.5, there is an acid-base balance issue. The thing that regulates that is the kidneys. Now, when we're looking at y'all's blood work, the thing that can elevate pH high is often stress. The things that can tank it, probably more than anything else, is metals and mold. And what do metals and mold and mycotoxins impact? the kidneys. Your kidneys are a target organ for them. Another benefit to the kidneys is they make sugar and glucose if your blood does not have enough sugar. So, the liver gets a really like highlighted pedestal approach when it comes to gluconeogenesis, but the kidneys can also play a role in that. They make a protein called renin that increases the blood pressure, and they produce hormones. This is less known, but there's a hormone called EPO, also calcitriol, which is a form of vitamin D that helps your body absorb calcium. A lot of this is tightly regulated through the parathyroid hormone gland. EPO is also what helps your body make red blood cells. So if your kidneys are stressed, can it lead to anemia? Yes. Can it lead to low vitamin D? Yes. Can that then impact your calcium levels? Yes. Can that then lead to hypothyroid and heart issues? Yes. Can all of this come back to poor kidney drainage? Yes. So a lot of this, we call it the rate limiting step of detox. When the kidneys start getting impacted, it's going to cause these most. There are other symptoms I'm going to kind of give y'all here in a second, but pain in the lower back is a clue. You start detoxing and feeling pain in your lower back, you need more kidney support. You need more drainage. If you have kidney stones or a history of kidney stones, think about the filter. If you have a filter and you go upstairs and you put stickers all over it, what's going to happen? You're going to have a backflow of air. That's a problem, right? So if there are kidney stones, we want to bring in things that can dissolve them. One of the best things to do that is Chancropiedra, PC, and B6, which are foundational supports. Feeling really tired and fatigue is another one. A frequent urge to urinate or waking up to pee in the middle of the night. Poor concentration, that swelling we're talking about, swollen or puffy face, shortness of breath, foamy urine, hair loss, dullness. Some other like less known symptoms would be like a metallic taste in the mouth. That's one. And the one that we didn't put on here, like major like shifts in emotions. So, I think it was Alexandra that maybe asked me, like, when clients start detoxing and feel waves of like emotions when they're going after metals and mold, why is that happening? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities there, but I think one of the big things is probably the kidneys. And if we don't think that our organs can work in that manner, just think of the heart, right? Like, think about what happens when you have a broken heart and everything that transpires from that. Think about why kids, when they're worried, what happens? They get a stomach ache. Like, I don't feel good. So emotions can absolutely impact our organ systems. They absolutely can. So even while you're detoxing and you're going after these metals and mold, instead of stuffing down the emotions, think of, what am I feeling? Right? Like, let's bring it to the surface. Let's lay it out on the table. Let's identify what potentially could be driving that, because that's not uncommon for that to happen as well. We've shared this so many times. Allie, did you draw that big pink arrow?
It was one of the graphics, but it just seems so like, I don't know, appropriate.
Yeah.
Like,
it looks like a kid went on there with a paintbrush.
I know it does. And I don't think it was meant to be expanded so largely.
It's okay. I love it. It's like it needs your autograph on it. Okay, so y'all seen the cell core drainage funnel, which is off to the left there, which has cells at the top, then organs and tissues, then the lymph, then liver and bile duct, then colon. Kind of off to the side of liver, bile duct, and colon, you have lungs, kidneys, and skin, these forms of detoxification. We really like the man here with the outline in the purple to kind of show the rate limiting step where you have the liver bile duct going to the kidneys, but you also have the colon going back up to the kidneys, which is why constipation is not always a bowel issue. It's always interesting when someone's like, yeah, I took a kidney support, Uva Ursi, and all of a sudden I'm not constipated anymore. That's not a bowel support necessarily, but it's helping with electrolyte balance, mineral balance, which inherently helps you balance your fluid intake and draw water into the bowels, which allows you to go to the bathroom more efficiently. Thinking about even the way that traveling works. Traveling is going to dehydrate you. It's not necessarily that you just need a bunch of magnesium, it's that you need more minerals. So if you travel on an airplane, or even if you're driving in a car for a long period of time, drink a lot of mineral rich water. because that can help keep your bowels moving if you are someone who, when you travel, you struggle with constipation. And then they have a few other symptoms they listed there, like poor appetite. That can be one. The eye puffiness or dark circles, dry and itchy skin, feeling that tired yet wired, and then swelling or edema. Okay, so you want to play this, Allie? I don't know if I can click it and play it, so you may have to do that on your end, or we might have to come back to it at the end. Okay, she's probably feeding. We'll come back to this. All right, so when it comes to supports, this is not a full list. I'm doing even more like deep dives onto foods that can support the kidneys, but kind of going from the bottom down, basil and even holy basil. So think of like Tulsi tea, that can be really helpful. Dates, kidney beans, like we talked about. I love making herbal infusions. So cleavers, corn silk, horsetail, and dandelion are some of my favorites. It's where you would just put herbs in a little tea container, steep it in really, really hot water to extract the nutrients from that tea. Cranberries, that's also why a lot of UTI remedies have cranberries in them. Goji berries, I think they have like 21 different nutrients in them, and they have more vitamin C per ounce than an orange. Vitamin C is very helpful for the kidneys. Don't know how I just remembered that, but they do. And they support the removal of toxins from the kidneys. The only downside to goji berries is they are a nightshade. So if you do have nightshade issues, goji berries probably would not be your top support. If the kidneys are really struggling, then lowering overall oxalate levels can be helpful. I don't think you necessarily have to go 0 oxalates, but lower oxalates, and then lots of, just think of deep, deep, deep red, blue, and purple colored foods. Those antioxidant polyphenol rich foods are going to be really helpful for the kidneys. What's really interesting about kidney stones is most of them are actually coming from oxalates. So when your oxalate levels are high in the body, those extra oxalates combine with calcium, which can usually be in excess due to the fact that it's been pulled from the bones due to high phosphorus levels. I'll get to that here in a little bit, in your kidneys, and it forms basically calcium oxalate crystals in the urine. This will sometimes come up on a urinalysis for people. We'll see like oxalates or crystals present or few. And that's kind of what this is communicating. You might also see protein in the urine. That's another thing that can show up on a urinalysis. But we also want to ask, okay, what is stressing the kidneys? What are some of the deeper rooted lying things? So these are going to be the most common ones and the things that we see come up probably more often than not. Now, I will add, someone could have kidney dysfunction, and I have 2 clients who are this way. They're not an RCF, but they have autoimmune kidney disease. And so they naturally, like on here, a common cause of kidney dysfunction is too low of a protein diet. They actually have to eat a low protein diet with autoimmune kidney because that excess protein breaks down into ammonia and it throws off their uric acid levels and their kidney filtration markers. What caused the autoimmune kidney disease, right? It could be lots of things. I mean, both of them have done Creating Balanced Health, and metals came up and mycotoxins came up and Lyme and Bartonella came up. And so, you know, there's lots of possibilities. But autoimmune probably, though, is in this category too, isn't necessarily a cause of kidney dysfunction. That's an immune challenge. So not enough electrolytes, waters, and minerals. This is going to be one of the most common things. Most people are chronically dehydrated from either not enough water or not mineralizing it properly. Y'all know I'm the worst water drinker in the entire world. Like, I have to have this by me 24/7. I have to add flavor to it, or homegirl here is not drinking water. I have to be better about it. And when I heard, this was a wake-up call for me. When you feel thirst, you're already chronically dehydrated. I was like, ooh, I got some work to do. So you should, you know how everyone always says, just drink water when you're thirsty. No, 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 no. Like that's like, you're too far gone at that point. That's like an alarm system of something's very much not right. Kind of like when you get a headache. right? That's not when you decide to start drinking more water and eating foods that are good for you. So you should not actually feel thirst. If you're waking up in the morning feeling really thirsty, then there probably was not enough water in the day before, or not enough minerals, or kidney stagnation where the fluid balance is disrupted. Heavy metals is another, sorry, go ahead, Al.
I was going to say, we talked about this with someone, I don't remember which call it was, but recently talking about like, okay, what are some tricks to drinking water if you are someone that's not great at, like, I'm not great at drinking water either, but like, I just have times during the day when I try and focus on it. And ideally, everyone is drinking water in between meals, because if you're drinking water with meals, you're basically kind of like diluting your stomach acid, which you don't want to do. So think of those windows of opportunity when you're not eating as like your chug water moments. So I always have like a full thing of water in the car. Like if I'm going to pick up my son from school and on the way back, I say, okay, I'm going to try and get through half of this, or I'm going to try and finish this. So like you can make little games out of it if it's that difficult, which for a lot of people it is. And so just kind of building that into your time frame of your day, instead of realizing at the end of the day, like, oh crap, I really didn't drink much water at all. Like that's not helpful. And focusing on those times in between meals is the best time to drink water.
Yeah, between meals. Do you want to talk on that a little bit more too, and why that's important to not chug a bunch of water with meals?
Yeah, I mean, the reason being is that the water, basically, if you're thinking about the pH of the water and your stomach acid, you're diluting your stomach acid when you're drinking water during meals. And so you want your stomach acid to be super high to be able to digest food. You want that hydrochloric acid to be high. You want your digestive enzymes to be efficient, and water basically dilutes that. So you're not helping your food break down or mash or get sludgy. Like my husband literally still, how many times have I told him to not drink so much water during his meal? He's like, it's helping me get it through. I'm like, no, your teeth are supposed to do that. Like, it's not helping mash it. Like, it drives me nuts. So you're just diluting your stomach acid is what you're doing. And then your body can't digest your food as well. So if you're like drinking, or carbonated water is another thing. Like if you're drinking carbonated water, especially with meals, you know, and you're feeling bloated after, it's like, well, yeah, you just kind of like pushed all the digestive enzymes and HCl out of the way. And now your body has less efficiency of digestion.
Yep. So true. So yeah, Jamie said not drinking half an hour before meals and 1 hour after. Yeah, that's a really good goal to have to really allow for proper digestion for sure, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
So if you like factor that in and you're like, okay, if I can't, if I'm like choosing not to drink water during those times, there's only like probably a certain amount of windows that you have to drink water efficiently and have it actually work for you. So like you might as well take advantage. That's the best way to think of it.
Yeah.
Get her done while you can.
Yeah. All right. So then heavy metals. So the kidneys, due to their structure and the like, there's, you know, metals have ion properties, positive, negative. The kidneys, same thing. So they're, because all of your electrolytes, like when you look at them, it's like Ca2 plus or Cl minus, right? There's protons, electrons, electrical properties to them. So think about a magnet. That's essentially what's happening. So your kidneys are a magnet to accumulate divalent heavy metals. It's the first target organ for heavy metal toxicity. So when we start detoxing or going after parasites, which are a sponge for heavy metals, if the kidneys are not being supported, then those metals are going to go and divalently attach to the kidneys and impair their function. So supporting drainage is really, 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 really important. Even when it comes to like kidney cells, we talked about viruses, mycotoxins are another. Think about PC and its need to take it in to be able to export the mycotoxins and viral loads off the bus. If drainage isn't working, those are going to get absorbed by the kidneys. They can also create excess oxalates. We kind of already covered the kidney stone calcium oxalate issue. In addition to that, oxalic acid that has the second strongest affinity for magnesium. And as we know, magnesium has tons of processes. And so if that's being depleted, it's going to throw off a lot of the other really important minerals. Calcium and magnesium are also needed in a really delicate balance. Low protein diet. So if someone's not eating enough protein, then this can make it harder for the kidneys to remove excess water. So simply by increasing the amount of protein in your diet, granted, you need to be digesting that protein. It will help your kidneys remove excess water. It'll help with some of that puffiness and inflammation and stagnation that's happening, and stress. So uncontrolled stress is going to lead to kidney issues because it impacts blood pressure and blood sugar responses. That will strain the kidneys and deplete magnesium and B6, which are not only needed for supporting the nervous system, but also, like, if we don't have B6, we will retain heavy metals in our kidneys. We also need B6 to absorb and retain magnesium. Both of those are also needed to manage oxalate issues. So that's why, like, even though all these things can be going on, when we can lower our stress levels, drink enough minerals, address nutrient deficiencies, balance blood sugar by tracking with a glucometer, that's going to reduce the strain on those kidneys so that they can filter more efficiently and better. Another really important connection to talk about is calcium and phosphorus. So when your kidneys become burdened, it will not be able to get rid of extra phosphorus. Now, when we have too much phosphorus, not only does that impact the other balance of other minerals, because all of your minerals work in balance with one another, it's going to cause your phosphorus to essentially build up in the blood because your kidneys can't get rid of it, because your kidneys are already burdened due to either dehydration, stress, chemicals, toxins, mycotoxins. So when that happens, your phosphorus and calcium are like a seesaw. So that phosphorus is building up in the blood because the kidneys can't get rid of it. What that's going to do is it's going to cause calcium to actually be pulled from the bones in an effort to regain balance, so that that calcium's coming into the bloodstream to bring that seesaw back down. When we have that calcium in the blood that's too high, it weakens the bones, it creates kidney stones, and it interferes with the rhythm of how the heart and the brain work. So then someone goes to a doctor with heart palpitations, and what are they given? A calcium channel blocker. It's a Band-Aid. It's a complete Band-Aid. When all that really has to happen is you have to get phosphorus levels back in balance, which means the kidneys have to properly remove them, which means we have to support the kidneys as a whole. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So moving on to the next slide, blood work. So when we're looking at our kidneys off, electrolytes being off should be a key thing. Now, they may not be optimally out of range. Electrolytes, we have to look at seesaw patterns. So if you're looking and you're around 135 or less than 135, there's probably some kidney dysfunction taking place. If you're above on the higher limit of sodium, there's probably some kidney function taking place. Potassium's the same thing. If we're, on that low 135 or drifting towards there, and potassium's creeping up to 4.5 or above, and we have that seesaw pattern, or it's going the opposite direction, kidney dysfunction is taking place. Fluoride, similar. If we're dipping below 100, which is a chronic stress response, or we're elevating above 105, 106, kidney dysfunction. Carbon dioxide. Think of the way oxygen works. If you're below 25 or you're elevated above 30, probably some kidney dysfunction taking place. Same thing with calcium and phosphorus. Now, blood is not the best way to look at, do you have too much or too little calcium or phosphorus? It's really not the best way to look at that. We can look at patterns, and we can look at, okay, because calcium's elevated, the thyroid's probably under functioning, and there's something deeper going on that's throwing it off. But a hair tissue mineral analysis is probably the best way to explore your levels of calcium and phosphorus if you want to get one run. But we still love seeing the blood markers because it is really telling. Other things that can be off are your liver enzymes. So high AST, ALT. All of your drainage systems work in tandem with one another. If your kidneys aren't filtering properly, the phase 2, which are your water-soluble toxins from the liver, it's going to cause a backup, which will stress what? Your liver enzymes. So you'll tend to see those start creeping up, and it may not be a liver problem. It could be a kidney problem. The same thing goes for your renal function markers. So creatinine and BUN, I don't think I put BUN on here, but BUN should also be in that low or high category. I'll update that for y'all. But creatinine, BUN.
Uric acid too. Do you want to add uric acid here?
So that one's difficult because of all the markers we look at, we rarely see uric acid out of range unless someone has confirmed edema or confirmed gout. You know what I mean? So I don't feel like
Mhm.
it's the best way to like look at uric acid and be like, oh, my uric acid looks okay. I must not have a kidney problem. Does that make
Totally.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But creatinine, BUN, EGFR, which is the filtration rate, LDH, and vitamin D. Low or high with those, or you're trending in that direction, is a very good clue that the kidneys are struggling a bit. Now, what's interesting with ALT is we always talk about how it can be low with a B6 need. Remember how I talked about how important B6 is for the kidneys? With progressed kidney disease, with both of my autoimmune kidney clients, they both came back for B low and they were both low in ALT. It's just really interesting to find that connection. So, can ALT, a liver enzyme, be lowered with kidney disease? Yes, it absolutely can. Usually you'll see things medically out of range. BUN will be surpassing 30. Creatinine will either be bottomed out or super high. EGFR will start dipping below, like in the 80s, 70s, 60s, or surpass and go above 120. And then vitamin D, the best way to assess kidney function with vitamin D is to look at the 1-to-1 ratio between the inactive and active. So 25 OH, if you are at a, let's say 50, and you run 125 OH and you're at a 10, there's a conversion problem. There's probably something going on with either the liver or the kidney. So those should be in a 1-to-1 ratio. The reason we don't always run the active form is it's really expensive. And usually someone's vitamin D will be off with imbalanced drainage or root causes. So yeah, we could run it in the future, but I feel like there's bigger fish to fry there. Other things, so someone asked, like, how would you know if you had kidney disease, for example? Things would probably be medically out of range. But in the really advanced stages of kidney disease, another thing you're going to see is like huge variations in protein and albumin and the lipid panel markers and IgM and bilirubin, which is a gallbladder marker, uric acid, prolactin. So that's why, like with uric acid, when someone has gout, they have a kidney problem, right? There is a fluid imbalance taking place. The same thing kind of could be said about the protein, albumin, bilirubin markers as well.
One thing that's interesting about gout, because my dad has bouts of gout, and the man does not drink water, like at all. So that's not shocking. The electrolyte imbalance is off. Also, he always has a flare, which he refuses to acknowledge when he eats shellfish. Why? Because shellfish, things that are high in purines, break down to uric acid. And when the uric acid is high, that upsets the kidneys.
Yep, it sure does.
So
It sure does.
yeah, I feel like people think that gout is like this, like, oh, I don't understand why it happens. It's like literally everything we just said is the perfect example of why it happens.
Yep. Hey, Ali, I had to come back to this video because I don't know how to play it.
Oh,
Do you want me to just look it up online?
yeah, it's one of the first one that comes up. It's the TED Talk one.
Okay.
Oh, it's because this is a PDF, not the active. Yeah.
Let me first show you guys the articles on the COVID stuff. I have one on mycotoxins too, and then I'll play this.
We can
video.
always just play this. I can post this like in the education module if we run out of time.
Yeah, and then they can watch it on their own time.
Yeah,
That'll be good.
that's fine.
Because it just kind of breaks down the kidneys really well. Okay, so
Yeah.
let me stop this share. Let me start a new share. So I can go over some of these with y'all. Some of these studies are like 2021 and newer. So they're like fairly new. Okay. So obviously, if you've never looked at a PubMed study, this is probably going to be a lot of information, but I'm going to try to simplify it in the best way I can.
Usually
Okay.
what's cool too about PubMed is if you scroll to the very bottom, if this is new for some of you, like they do usually give a summary. So they do kind of a good job of wrapping it up.
Well, and this would be good to kind of go over how you would see this. So if you ever see on a online Instagram post or anything we do, this number here with the letters PMID, you could go Command C, right click copy and put that specifically in Google. So if I were to go up here and put just that in Google, need this to go away, it will pull up the study for you. So I just searched the PubMed thing. Come on. And it'll come up right there. So that's what's super nice about those markers. PMID. Okay. So this was a study that was published September 17th, 2021, right here. And it had the long-term effects of COVID-19 on the kidney. So when you kind of look through this, it's going to throw you a lot of things of like AKI, which basically stands for acute kidney injury. I've never understood why in PubMed studies they feel the need to abbreviate everything. It makes things way more complicated because if you want to scroll down here and you're like, what the heck's AKI? AKI, you have to go all the way back to the top and figure out what they're abbreviating. So that's a super frustrating thing. But acute kidney injury affects, and this one said 20%. Others said 30, but it's because it's hospitalized versus ICU. But then you have to factor in what about all the people who did not go into the hospital? So acute kidney injury affecting over 20% of hospitalized patients and over 50%, 1 in 2 of patients in the ICU. That's like a staggering number when you even think about it. And then they went into, in this study, kind of discuss like the renal function on the discharge of the patient. So a lot of times with these studies, when you go down, they're going to give you like other studies that they've looked into to basically support or go against what they're hypothesizing has happened. Or if it's a review, they're just looking at a bunch of studies all together. So like with this, they're referring to a different study that described how 6 months after the diagnosis in a fairly large cohort group, if you see a cohort of like 9 to 10 people, it's probably not the best study ever unless it's a placebo-controlled human clinical trial. But this was quite a few people that were discharged from the hospital. 4% were admitted into ICU, low rates of AKI 6%, no mention of RRT. Now, what's frustrating about that is you're like, let me go all the way back up to the top and figure out what that is. But they'll usually, like Ali said down here, give you sort of kind of the summary synopsis. So the immediate impact of COVID-19 on patients with pre-existing renal disease has been severe with high mortality rates. Analysis of large prospective cohorts of patients that have survived COVID-19, such as the VOS-COVID study, will allow us to understand the proportion. Like we're kind of living in a big science experiment right now, basically, is what's happening. The proportion of all patients who have survived with long-term renal impairments and the risk factors that predispose to it. So if you have family members or friends and they had COVID, like this is why getting basic labs, y'all, is so important, because even if there's tissue damage, you can reverse tissue damage with inflammatory support, with phosphatidylcholine, with things that modulate the immune system, with getting rid of stones. So it's not a forever thing, but these people probably aren't doing anything. So having basic labs is so important. Obviously, they're saying, you know, genetics play a role. But the big thing is identifying these biomarkers that we're talking about in the people that we love. So that's kind of a more complex study. This was just an article that I was looking through today that kind of breaks things down as far as long COVID goes. And they put on here, kidney involvement is common in patients with acute SARS-CoV-2 infection. Subclinical inflammation and injury may persist for many months, resulting in a progressive decline in kidney function that leads to chronic kidney disease. Do I personally think that we're going to see a massive rise in chronic kidney disease in the years to come? I do. I truly do, because when you have those cells that are being impacted, it's kind of like anything, like with even the liver, when you have cirrhosis and that scarring, it's going to continue to manifest and happen if the underlying things are not being addressed. So we know that COVID woke up dormant infection loads that can create cytokine storms and activate other viruses and infections. And so addressing those takes the burden off the kidneys. But so does drinking enough water, having enough minerals. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't have balanced blood sugar because most people are walking around with prediabetes and don't even know it. All right, so then it goes up. I don't know how to get rid of this top thing here. It's driving me nuts. I think they had a chart down here that I liked. No, that was a different article. Oh yeah. So this was a conceptual, let me see if I can minimize this. Conceptual model of trajectories of kidney function after the SARS-CoV infection. So look at, you have kidney failure, which is at the bottom, and you have healthy kidneys at the top. So the left is measuring kidney function. The right or the bottom is measuring time after the SARS-CoV-2 infection. So you have no COVID infection. Look at the healthy kidneys, that's line 1. And then you have the SARS COVID infections and the various little bubbles and lines that take place. So it said patients with a high burden of frailty, chronic disease, disability, and a long immuno word are at increased risk of kidney disease, which you would know, right? If there's already other triggers, and progression to kidney failure. And infection with COVID can increase the risk. Kidney function declines gradually over time, which we've talked about. I always wonder, does kidney function decline over time, or does our accumulation of heavy metals increase over time? Because heavy metals are about, like, over the long period, absorbing them. So you don't just absorb a ton of them right away. Patients who are hospitalized with COVID might experience a rapid loss of kidney function, resulting in acute kidney injury during this acute phase of the disease. Post-infection kidney function trajectories can vary and might include complete recovery, as indicated by no change in the trajectory compared with patients who are not infected, slow progressive decline owing to subclinical inflammation, relapsing or recurrent acute kidney injury and hospitalization, or incomplete recovery, rapidly progressive kidney disease. So really, really, really interesting how it's impacting people in that way. They kind of confirmed that COVID, the pandemic, provides an opportunity to advance their understanding. We're in a science experiment right now of how infection-associated acute kidney injury might worsen CKD and to develop novel therapies to delay progression of kidney disease. It's a mess. The last few, this one was just similar to the other one. Long-term kidney function recovery and mortality after COVID. They just gave you a real quick finding of their methods and interpretation, basically that it's associated with higher mortality, which is just best. COVID-19 long haulers at risk for developing kidney damage and disease. The good thing is y'all now have these markers to look at, to watch, to be mindful of, and how to support them. And this is why this is scary for everybody else who's not aware of it. It's known as a silent killer. Kidney dysfunction disease tends to be free of pain and other symptoms, so much so that the National Kidney Foundation estimates that 90% of people with ailing kidneys don't know it. Kidney disease affects 37 million people in the US and is one of the nation's leading causes, but we never hear about it, right? So it's just a little bit of chaos. And then these two have nothing to do with COVID, but anytime you want to look up how certain things affect the kidneys, this is the key word you want to look for. It's also why one of the supplements we like from Biotics is called Nephrazyme. It's kind of like the science nephra, so nephrotoxicity. And you could look up nephrotoxicity and mycotoxins, nephrotoxicity and viruses, nephrotoxicity and heavy metals. And it'll come up more than if you use the word kidney. They make things really hard in PubMed and to find.
Or did you know that a kidney doctor is called a nephrologist?
I know.
It's
I'm like, can't you
different
just
from a
call it
urologist.
a kidney doctor? Like,
A nephrologist.
yeah. But if you want to look more into that of how mycotoxins impact it and various things, that is the way to do it. They usually have really good graphics that help break it down a little bit as well. Mycotoxin exposure, they go into the ochratoxins like aspergillus and how those impact it. And then this last one is just a really good one that it would have taken me probably 10 years to break down everything in here with y'all tonight, but it's an all in all really good. It's my favorite study I found on PubMed for the kidneys. So it's titled The Kidney Dysfunction Epidemic Part 1 Causes. And it breaks down causes and how it's impacting it. So it goes into how the kidneys are damaged. It goes into heavy metals and how those are impacted. I will say the biggest heavy metal that's a problem is cadmium. That's the one that even Dr. Klinghardt says will go in and clog the kidneys. And it's because of its half-life. So with a worrisome half-life of more than 10 years. So you know how we talk about heavy metals can take time and patience to remove? This is why. I know that's so frustrating. And that's why some of your symptoms of puffiness or inflammation or lower back pain may take time to resolve, or the low energy, but just trust that what you're doing is good. It breaks down mercury as well, how the kidneys have a high affinity for mercury. In fact, within a few hours of exposure, 50% of the mercury that gets into the blood ends up in the kidneys. Which, yeah, mercury is everywhere too. This is why I like to go through a bottle of Takisumi every few months. That's a binder from Cellcore that he even said long-term studies have not shown that the binder bound to any good minerals and good things, but we're just exposed to so much of this in our environment that it's helpful to sprinkle those in every once in a while. Organic pollutants, probably herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate would fall into this. So would, oh, it even has them. Yeah, herbicides, pesticides, non-stick coatings, fire retardants, lots of things within the home. Hydrocarbons, so PTFE chemicals. This is very common in cooking pans. So being mindful of not using those non-stick pans with all the junk on them. I thought this was wild. They did this figure here from a generic non-stick pan to a Teflon pan. Up here, it has exactly what happened, that within only 2 minutes on a hot stove, the non-stick coating started to release toxic gases. 2 minutes. And the lowest temperature at which this starts to occur is 392 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature commonly achieved in the typical kitchen. The temperature at which most oils start to smoke is high enough for the polymers to start breaking down. And this is the only unfortunate part, and why, taking a binder when you travel or eat out is important. I can promise you this is the pans they're using at restaurants. Now, does this mean we never go out and enjoy meals with our friends and family? No, that's part of living our life. But take a binder with you, support drainage more, drink a lot of minerals and water, add some lemon juice at the restaurant with some sparkling water before your meal, 30 minutes before your meal, to kind of purify and cleanse those kidneys. They go into glyphosate. 2-year study in rats drinking water with 0.1 parts per billion of glyphosate resulted in cellular kidney abnormalities. Smoking. Good old-fashioned NSAIDs, which are super popular nowadays, Tylenol, Advil. Toxins from the gut. This is going to be probably the byproducts of when parasites die off, dysbiosis, fungus. Now, they said excessive salt in the diet. I guarantee you it's the processed salt, not the good stuff. Most people don't get enough of the good stuff. Here's the phosphorus connection. So excess phosphate. Phosphorus is very high in soda. Now, I know a lot of y'all don't drink soda, but that's a very common drink in our world. People go out and they get their Coke and their Dr. Pepper. It's very, very, very high in phosphorus. So that's going to throw off the kidneys will not be able to remove them. It's going to pull calcium from the bones. It's going to throw off those levels. Yeah, research has shown that excessive phosphorus consumption disrupts hormone regulation of phosphorus, calcium, vitamin D, causing disordered mineral metabolism, osteoporosis, because it's pulling that calcium from the bones, cardiovascular disease, and impaired kidney function. Anything that decreases blood flow to the kidneys results in decreased excretion of toxins. If y'all take nothing else away from tonight's thing, take that away. Anything that decreases blood flow to the kidneys results in decreased excretion of toxins. This is why foundations is so important. I think we focus so much on the how do I get rid of the toxins. We have to emphasize and focus on movement, water, deep breathing, quality food, hydration, good air quality in the home, good water. Because your kidneys can actually cleanse themselves when they're given the cofactors to be able to do so. When that happens, what will happen? They will eliminate those water-soluble toxins, like metals. All right, so that is everything. I haven't seen the chat. Are there chat things? Does anyone have questions?
I answered a good amount of them as we went.
Sweet.
Yeah. Oh, main sources of cadmium.
I
like
have several. What?
I was just gonna, it's in like natural things too. It's like, it's in the soil in some cases, like it's in, actually, there was an article that I just saw that brand Theo chocolate, like you can find cadmium in chocolate or heavy metals in chocolate. It's, you know, more or less for the most part, I feel like a soil issue, but I mean, yes, it is found in certain foods, but again, some of these foods are really healthy foods. It's depending on if the body is able to get rid of them in high levels versus like completely not eating them at all.
Yeah.
Like actually looking at an oat test, I was talking with another practitioner and oxalate levels were super high, but the recommendation was not to get rid of all oxalate foods. It was to work on foundation so the body can actually just process what's already there in the beginning. So it was kind of like a good reminder because I would have looked at that and thought, oh, okay, we probably need to take out oxalates. And she's like, no, we don't need to do that. We need to get the body better functioning on its own. It'll do it for you. Don't worry about overhauling your diet because that also creates a lot more stress.
Yeah. I looked up in my notes. So cadmium is obviously like in foods because it's common in water and plant soils. So just being mindful of what you're eating and purifying your water, but it's also it comes from food storage containers.
Like
Very interesting.
stuff before it gets to us. Or are you talking about like, yeah.
Well, like no, like when you're storing food.
Like in like glass containers?
Well, I don't know if I'm pretty sure that
I mean glass, lead, I don't know.
so
That's
the new, I don't know this brand, but the new painted Corelle dishware does contain high levels of cadmium. That's like one of the first links that comes up. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, cooking pans would be a common, or like, yeah, I mean, talk about COAs, like being important if they will show you things like collagen protein from soil, testing for heavy metals, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's someone that did a glass deep dive. What's her name? Ruan Living. And glass is still the most inert material and one of our most non-toxic options. Benefits of glass, tips. I didn't even know this. Let me show y'all this. There's like, you learn something every day, right? Like, did y'all know that there's 2 different types of glass?
I did actually. Yeah.
I
Can I tell you? Because I learned about this when I went on a deep dive looking for a way to heat my water for my King coffee. So it's I don't know how to say it, borosilicate glass or whatever is one of the safest kinds. And I think it's produced in Europe or Germany or something. That's the glass that you want to look for when heating, because otherwise it'll excrete any of the toxins. Like if you're heating glass using it heat.
Wow.
But yeah, it also doesn't break as much under heat pressure.
I didn't know that. I've never even heard of soda lime glass. That's probably what I'm using. What are mason jars made out of? Soda lime?
Probably.
I'm drinking toxic water right now. No, I'm just kidding. I really
I
don't
don't
care.
know. The glass, the electric kettle that I have, is where I ran into looking for it, which I can link at some point.
She didn't share her favorites. Ruan didn't share her favorites. She said, shop my glass choice on my curated non-toxic living store on Amazon. Thanks, Ruan. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but so yeah, I mean, you just baby steps.
Right. But the glass that you're doing, even if it is lemon lime, whatever that it was, lime glass, it's better than plastic. So like that is an important factor. And I almost got on Instagram, like on a soapbox today, but I was like, refrain from speaking and pouring into this nonsense. But like, I don't know if you guys saw this post about like, I don't even remember her name, someone I wasn't following, but about boycotting Siete because they wouldn't give her the exact COAs and whatever. And I'm just like, girlfriend, it is better than like Frito-Lay or like it is better than so many other things. Like it's like such a trap in the health space for people to be like so overly cautious that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't.
You do the best you can. And
Yes.
that's what, like all of y'all are doing is you do the best you can. You make small steps over time, but like, I mean, the fear of the food is going to cause more issues.
100%. And then she gets on there and was like, these are my two favorite crackers. I'm like, I've never heard of those. They're probably $20 a bag and they taste like paper. But if that's what you want to do, go for it. But like, stop trying to like fear base all the people thinking they're doing a good job because they are doing a great job.
Yeah, I know.
I was
You're
just
always
like,
gonna
good
see it.
Lord.
And that's where like also if y'all are like having a hard time deciding, like there are times when I go out to a restaurant, it's probably cooked in aluminum pans. There's probably tons of seed oils and canola oil. It's probably dairy from cows shot up with so many antibiotics. There's gluten on the dish. It probably is not real pineapple. It probably came from a can that had like sugar. And I just sit there with my meal and I say, Lord Jesus, I pray that you bind all the gluten in Jesus' name, all the toxins in Jesus' name. We're going to bless this food. Amen. And I always feel fine. So
It's all about balance. It really is.
Use that.
Yeah.
And y'all will be good. Promise.
I gotta grab my battery from my computer, so I'm gonna jump off for 2 seconds. Bye.
Okay. So bilirubin is a liver and gallbladder marker because it relates to the bile ducts. That's why. So it can be both because you got to think where the gallbladder and the liver sits. They sit together. You guys went out for sushi and the lady told us you have to get the special and it was just a flaming aluminum foil. What, Jamie?
I'm dying laughing. It was my birthday. We went out to this like really nice sushi restaurant, and the lady was like, "You have to get the special. It's flaming. It's flaming." So we were like, "Okay, cool, get it." And it was like one of my friends, and they all know like how I am, you know.
Yeah.
And like literally, this thing comes, and it's a gigantic aluminum foil. Like the roll was inside, and it was like on fire. And they were like, "You're not going to eat that, are you?" We were like dying laughing. It was
I mean, but that's probably how they cook all their baked potatoes at restaurants. Wrap that sucker, all the fish in aluminum foil, you know? That's funny. And it's on fire. Goodness. Best foods to support gallbladder with. Everything that will support the liver will support the gallbladder too.
Beets are my favorite. Beet kvass.
Beets kvass.
They sell it at some farmers markets, but I love it.
I'm sure there's other ones that are like I didn't know that supported the gallbladder, like kidney beans supporting the kidney, but usually anything that supports the liver will support the gallbladder too. Getting enough fat, not going no fat, zero fat, that's a big issue.
Ox bile for support. Beta plus salts if you need them.
Gallbladder ND, TUDCA. Okay. Do I have any advice or resources for adrenal adenoma?
I answered that one, but that's fine. You can answer it.
I mean, if it's a tumor, you got to figure out what caused the tumor, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
I mean, if the adrenals are producing more aldosterone, which is the hyper, whatever you said, then it's what's causing the adrenal stress. That could be so many things.
Yeah. I agree. I think next week we're doing, let me look at my little list.
I think while you're doing that, the question of how long does it take to improve the kidneys if you're doing all these things? I mean, I think it's almost like anything else.
It took me 5 years. I'm not saying that'll be everyone, but it took me 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like creatinine and bun and EGFR into range. I'll put it that way.
And it depends on what it is that's stressing it. If it's like the metals and you saw the half-life of 10 years, I mean, that's a big difference between balancing out your sodium potassium levels.
Right. Or balancing blood sugar. You can balance blood sugar pretty quickly.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it probably just depends on what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how long does it take to heal the gut? I mean, for some people, a really long time if it's like leaky gut and you have like, the pockets and things and you're sealing up that epithelial lining versus someone who like takes out gluten and they're like, oh, it's weird, I feel better. And you're like, that's so great for you. I love that for you. You know what I mean? Like it's totally different for every single person.
Yeah. I think we also have to have perspective. I was at my parents last night and our family friends were over, and one of my best friends is an in-home nurse. And I think, y'all, I honestly think we forget what a lot of other people go through. She has a patient who is, I can't remember if she said 23 or 27 years old. I'm leaning more towards 23. And this poor girl, because of Crohn's disease, had to have the lower part of her large intestine removed. So for the rest of her life, she will have one of those bags that basically empties from your upper colon into the bag. She can't put on weight to save her life. So she weighs currently, Perry said, 71 pounds. Like, doesn't feel like she can go out to eat because she's got this, it's just, I think we so often forget about perspective. So, she was just telling me, like, because she's an in-home nurse and like who she goes and visits and why and what, and some people that can't survive week to week without IVs. Like, it's just, yeah. So like the ability to have this knowledge and recognize lab markers and support our body as a whole is just such a privilege,
Mhm.
and the ability to not have to have a bag that we're attached to, that we can't literally go to the bathroom. So definitely opened my eyes once again to wow, 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 wow. And then it makes me be like, I wish I could have seen her before they took her colon out.
Right.
We know that Crohn's is a cause of something else. She needed aloe. She needed to get Lyme addressed. You know what I mean? But it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But next week, yes, we can heal. Next week, we are doing the nervous system, which I think will be super cool. I'm going to bring it on the aspect of the physical, like what is happening at a cellular and physical level with nervous system stress. And then the following week, Amy will be doing a guest speaker call with y'all. And she has not given me all the details about what she is doing, but it has to do with what she's been sitting with the past few months and what she really feels like is needed from an emotional side of the nervous system and walking y'all through that. So I think it'll be a really cool back-to-back week of doing things.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
I'll have a good rest of your Monday. Let us know if you need anything, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.